Hello, BookTube. Well, we're back at it for the library tour. Library Tour 2024 is well and truly launched. We are at this bookcase that has 2,000 books on it, so God knows when we'll even finish this. We are at shelf number 1 of this bookcase, shelf number 4 in the library tour, but we're working our way through. This is a lot of mass market paperbacks. They are all double stacked or triple stacked, so we've got a long way to go before we even get up a shelf. So let's start with, okay, we've got another Walker Percy. This should be with the last one that I showed you. This is Love in the Ruins, another of his novels. I found 2 of them with this design. Is it available? Yeah, here it is. I found 2 of them with this design. And it had been a while since I gave Walker Percy any kind of reconsideration. I read all his books as they were coming out. So I thought I would. I confess, the thought that was mainly on my mind is that I would wait. I got these at the Brattle Bookshop, and I thought if you see 2 of these that are in this cover design, this similar cover design, then probably there are 6 others that are coming. What are the chances that someone had only 2? Especially since you can tell by the warping here that these were red. So I kind of thought that I was waiting for them, but I ended up reading these 2 anyway. I mean, and I don't have any Walker Percy as ebooks, I don't think. I certainly don't have any hardcovers, no trade paperbacks of any kind. He was once upon a time talked about. This one, The Last Gentleman, I did not get at all. It seemed to me to be just unbelievably, almost nefariously tone deaf. This one I like better. This was more three-dimensional, but only just. Not a whole lot. Then we have 2 copies of James Michener, another James Michener. So we saw, did we see Alaska last time? This is Chesapeake, which I think is his single most effective book. And I have 2 mass market paperbacks of this thing, these huge 1,000-page things. How big is this one? Yeah, 1,082 pages with this wonderful little picture in the very back before about the author. Michener is largely forgotten nowadays, but once upon a time, he was the biggest thing in publishing. And he did these huge things where he, like Alaska or Texas or the Chesapeake or whatever, he would go over stories from an area in order to capture it in a gigantic thousands-year panorama. And it works. It really does. I don't know 100% sure which of his books, maybe it's impossible to say which of his books is the best. For instance, he wrote a book called The Novel that isn't one of these panoramic things at all. I thought it was very good. Very, very good. In terms of these are what you think of when you think of Michener, these big doorstops that do this sort of thing. And when it comes to these, I'm not sure if Chesapeake is my favorite or Hawaii. But I have 2 of Chesapeake. I tend to grab Michener mass market paperbacks whenever I see them. But again, I don't know if that's just nostalgia. I lost track of how many vacation homes had a copy of this, including a stay that I had on the Chesapeake shore that had copies of this thing. And I think there might be an element of nostalgia there because I don't know how well this would stand up to a reading. I guess I could experiment since I have 2 copies. I could afford to lose one. Oh, great. Okay. All right. These next 2 are book 2 and book 3 in the mass market paperback editions of Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa. We saw these already. We saw number 1. This is number 2. And this is number 3 with the gatefold cover here. Just delightful stuff. These delightful mass market paperbacks. I'm hoping this means I have them all. Why these 2 aren't with number 1, I don't know. but I believe that this is this even going to tell me? Translated by Charles Terry. I believe that is the same translation that you will get in the oversized hardcover. If you see the oversized hardcover. I think it's the same translation. I don't think this has been translated into English more than once. Okay, then we have another mass market doorstop. This thing is huge. Michener sized. This is well over 1,000 pages. Yeah, this is almost 1,500 pages. This is Helen Hoover St. This is And Ladies of the Club. Gigantic thing that the author wrote when she was quite old. She was not an ingenue when she had her breakout debut. This became an unbelievable hit. despite its size. It became an unbelievable hit, and it doesn't seem likely when you read the description of it, just the ongoing travails of the ladies' social club in a small town. You think, as it takes over the generations, we just follow the changing club membership and the interpersonal dramas, even the generational dramas. You hear that description and you think, there's no way I'd read even 10 pages of that, much less 1,500. A lot of people thought that when this was everywhere, when everyone was talking about this, and then they read it. You get hooked and you can't stop. Every bit as effective now as it was then. I don't know how well this thing would hold up, but I keep meaning to grab it. Every time I see, once upon a time, you couldn't go anywhere in a used bookstore world without seeing copies of this thing. And now I never see it. So if I see it, I grab it. Okay, then we have, this is by Dewey Lambden. This is The King's Coat. This is Napoleonic seafaring adventures of a character named Alan Lurie, who is very much not Horatio Hornblower. He's not even Jack Aubrey. But he's not quite Flashman either. He's more like a combination of all of those. So these are action-oriented naval adventures. They are far more slangily written than either Forster or O'Brien. But boy, oh boy, are they good. Oh boy, are they good. Alan Lurie is terrific. He has a virtuous soul. He is a hero. He's not an anti-hero. He is a hero, but he's far more acquainted with the seedy side of the law, with the dark side of port cities, far more louche and worldly than Jack Aubrey, especially than Horatio Hornblower. They're a wonderful counterpart, in other words. I wish there were a nice uniform edition of these. I think the first 2 or 3 of the Alan Lurie novels came out as mass market paperbacks in the United States, and then they didn't for a long time, and then they started coming out as trade paperbacks, each one of them looking completely different from all the others. A very sloppy U.S. print history that I don't know has ever been rectified. So I don't know what you'd be looking at if you. This series is still ongoing, I think. I don't know what you'd be looking at if you looked at all of them together. It wouldn't be a pretty picture I'm having, but they're well worth your time to find. Okay, then we have a historical novel by Noah Gordon. This is a medieval novel about a young man who rises from literally nothing, literally in the gutter, to become a very important doctor, a very important physician, at a time when, of course, medicine did not exist. So this is a lot about politics. This is a lot about a lot of other things, too. This is an older 1970s paperback. Is that right? 1986. Okay, 1986, or maybe earlier than that. Maybe it was reprinted in 86. This was reprinted a decade later in a much sturdier mass market paperback, the last mass market paperback that it got, that had a medieval mosaic on the cover of a doctor on a horseback covered in thick woolen garments. This has slightly more appeal. so this is the one that I have. I don't know how well this would survive a reread. It's very visceral stuff. Very, very good. Best thing Noah Gordon wrote. Okay. All right, we've already seen this guy. This is George Rogers Clark. This is Long Knife by James Alexander Thom, who's fantastic. He's a fantastic historical novelist. He wrote a lot of things. This is one of his best things about a towering figure in colonial North America that most North Americans have never heard of. Rogers is not in the history books anymore. He's relegated to a footnote or less. But he led a fascinating life, and this author was very similar to Alan Eckhart in that he did a huge amount of research before he wrote a word of what was going to be nominally a novel. So it's very engrossing historical fiction. Oh, and by the way, it's that same artist, right? It's the same artist that we saw on the cover of Anthony Adverse, right? Is that right? Yeah, see? Same artist. Same art style, where the art continues on the back. I don't know who this artist is. I really wish I knew. But this is really good. I don't know why I have it as a mass market. I mean, this I really don't think would survive a read. And even if it did, I don't think it would be very comfortable to read. The print is very small. The thing is very delicate. In order to read down into the gutter, you would. The actual gutter of the page. In order to do that, you would have to hold the thing open at an angle that would stress the spine. All these questions that don't exist for ebooks. But anyway, oh, right, okay. Then we move on to, this was the first book in a series by Colleen McCullough. She decided to write an enormous series about ancient Rome. The end of the Republic and the rise of Julius Caesar. That's basically the story that she's telling in, I think, 10 volumes. This was the first one. This has to be 1990, right? Yeah, 1990. This is the first man in Rome with this old cover artwork that may be the same artist. This may be the same guy. Because the artwork is very similar. It's the whole of the thing. There you have Marius, the first man in Rome, overlooking the city of the Republic, with a few anachronisms, but still. That might be the same artist. And is he even credited here? Even in 1990? When he was such a known quantity, you'd think they would credit him. Let's see. First Avon Printing. Published an arrangement with... Oh, cover art by Tom Hall. Tom Hall. Is he mentioned in here? Oh my god. Oh my god. I didn't realize this. Longknife has a fold-out map. Wonderful. Let's see. Let's see if you, 20 years earlier, actually credit this guy. No. Alright, you don't. But I think this is the same artist, and here he is. I will do a search online. Now that I have a name to play with, I'll do a search online and see if this is the same guy. Because somebody must have a website devoted to his work. What's his name again? Tom Hall. Anyway, this is huge. It's got a huge glossary in the back. It's got lamentable artwork by the author, and it's just a very sedate, slow story about the rise of Marius to the consulship, to what was going to be an absolutely transformative role in ruling Rome, as a one-man rule of Rome. Those of you who know this author from her breakout hit The Thornbirds would be expecting this book to be as readable, and it's not. None of them are in this series, with the possible exception of the much later novel simply called Caesar. None of them are as readable as that. None of them are as readable as The Ladies of Mr. Longueuil or Tim or The Thornbirds. Instead, this is something else, and I've never quite figured out what it is. I keep meaning, whenever I think about these books, I keep meaning to look around online on YouTube. There must be interviews with Colleen McCullough in which she lays out what she's thinking of for these things. And this is the second one in the series, Fortune's Favorites. Once again, we shift cover design. So here you have the illustration on this brick of a thing. Then we move to this, where the artwork is in the back. I think that's still our same artist. And since he was credited on the first book, he will certainly be credited on the second. Yeah, Tom Hall. Okay, I'm going to have to check and see if this is him who was doing all this artwork that I love. But this is, if the first book concentrates on Marius, the second book concentrates on Sulla Felix, Sulla the Lucky. A really good fictional portrayal of Sulla. It feels like Colleen McCullough is dramatizing history as opposed to writing historical fiction, which is not necessarily bad, but I don't know for sure if that's what she's doing. It just, some elements of these things still mystify me. I've read them God knows how many times. Okay, then we have Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho. This is his Jack the Ripper book, Night of the Ripper, in a mass market paperback. Don't know how many times this has ever been reprinted. I think Robert Bloch, aside from the novel Psycho, I think he's largely gone. And I don't think that any of his work is in print right now, or ever will be again. This thing, no. But I gobble up all literature on Jack the Ripper, including all fiction. We're going to see quite a bit of other fiction on Jack the Ripper as this library tour continues, until there's not one of you left standing. What have we got here next? Oh, Mark at Book Time with Elvis will be happy. We have R.F. Delderfield, a terrific, terrific writer. One of an ongoing question, I don't know how often it will come up in this library tour, of figuring out what to do, what I should do, what terms I should come to with the writing that was done in the free world after the end of World War II and before the fall of America. So that's a 70-year period. Who are those people? What do we make of those novels? What do we make of Earthly Powers by Anthony Burgess? And what do we make of R.F. Delderfield? This is The Avenue Goes to War, and I also have The Dreaming Suburb. He did a bunch of books like this. where I think 3 books like this. There's The Avenue at Peace, The Avenue Goes to War, and The Dreaming Suburb. This is book 1 and book 2, but I think there's a book 3. Mark would actually know better than I would. I don't know if this is actually going to tell me. But what he does here in these... oh, no. The Dreaming Suburb and Avenue Goes to War. So it looks like these are just the 2. What he does here is take a normal slice of a normal English world and show it changing over time. And really effectively. He's really quite good at it. Okay, all right. Then we have another huge book by him. I really don't know how this would hold up to a read. I should give it a try, but I don't have any backups for him. This is his book, God is an Englishman. Which is terrific. It's huge. It's 1,000 pages long. It may be 800 pages long. It may be my favorite thing. I like to serve them all my days as well, but it may be my favorite thing by him that is long. He also wrote some short books, and I have a few of those. But God knows if they'll all be together. Like here's another one. This is much shorter. This is The Green Gauntlet. This publisher, who is this? Ballantine? Ballantine did a ton, everything by him in mass market paperback with these original cover illustrations. And you can sort of see what's going on here. One theme working its way in the back of Delderfield is the fall of Eden. It's that once upon a time England was a green, peaceful, perished land without much of the intrusion of technology, without much of the intrusion of modernity, and certainly without war. Instead, it was these green patches of fields, and one day much like the other, and vicars all day long. And he wraps that world in mist and memory and melancholy, and it works really well. So I'm hoping that I have everything by him. That would be great. But I'm not seeing anything else. We have Howard Fast, The Unvanquished. This is his Revolutionary War novel. The author of Spartacus. I have The Unvanquished, and I read it. I read it again when I found it in this format. It held up really well to reread, even though it's much older than some books that hold up a lot less well. But it reminded me that I don't have a physical copy of Spartacus. Just shows you the gaps that turn up, even in an e-freak enormous library. the only library tour that would take longer than this would be if Mark Richardson did one. Of course, Mark Richardson and Richardson Reads here on BookTube catapulted to the attention of BookTube by doing an epic library tour. That's how I first saw his videos long before Frida and I were a guest in that house. And I can attest that his library has grown 3 times as big since that library tour. His library tour now, his library is enormous. But we're going to go through all of mine, and there are going to be gaps. I'm sure he has a copy of Spartacus. I don't. Okay, then we have A.M. Mom. This is Harry of Monmouth, a historical novel about Henry V. That there's no way that this is Tom Hall, right? First of all, there's no way that the cover artist will be credited. But now I'm wondering. No cover artist is credited. But he dedicates the book to his mother. It's a historical novel about Henry V. Not as many of those as you might think. Okay, this is already falling apart. Well, I'm to blame for that. This is Henry Treece. This is his novel Jason, about Jason and the Argonauts, already kind of falling apart. Because I got this and read it. I've read this a number of times. I think the Argonaut story is so fascinating. I don't particularly like Henry Treece as a prose artist. I don't like the way he writes. I think he's kind of boring. And the reread of this book did not dispel that illusion at all. So I don't know why I have it, except that how could I get rid of it, right? With huge divots taken out of it like that, I can't sell it to the Brattle, and I feel kind of heelish to put it in a little free library in that kind of shape. I'll probably just hold on to it. Okay. All right. We have a blast here from the 1970s, yes? No, 1958. This is Parish by Mildred Savage, the Connecticut author, Mildred Savage, who's now largely forgotten. This was her masterpiece. She wrote a story of a kind of Romeo and Juliet love story centered on 2 warring tobacco farming families. And it's a little bit florid, but it's really good. Parish is a really good novel. If I were ever going to do that study of the last 70 years of free American literature, so post-war and then pre-Trump, if I were to do that study, I would have to account for authors like Mildred Savage, who entered into the B list. She was never a bestseller. I don't think this was ever a bestseller, even though I think a movie was made out of it. Authors like this who did genuinely good work. Who's another one I could think of? Kirkwood. Is that his name? Thinking of Some Kind of Hero. Also had a movie made of one of his books. People talked about it briefly. There Must Always Be a Pony. He'll be in this tour. I'm blanking on his name. But there are dozens and dozens of people like this. Writing serious literature at a time when publishing companies were not expected to give their authors complimentary helicopters. They were not expected to bankrupt themselves for the next hot viral book talk sensation. So really good authors would be given an advance of $300. They would be eked along. They would, of course, have to have some other kind of employment. But in the meantime, they would be working on serious work that was seriously enthused about by their publisher. Their editor at their publishing house would be calling them up saying, "We believe in you. You need a few $100 more? We're not rich, but we'll do it. We believe in your work. And we'll try to get it to an audience." It never really worked. Hollywood, then as now, was usually the golden calf. But I would have to study these people. And Mildred Parrish would be on that list, even though no one's ever heard of her anymore. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Hank Soros would not be on that list. But this is his novelization of Jaws 2. With the classic cover there. The cover refers to the quintessential scene from the sequel to Jaws, which involves a water skier being menaced by a great white shark and eventually taken by it. It's wonderfully done scene in the movie. Jaws 2 is, I think, really, really good as a movie. It's not a dumb sequel. And I think that the scene with the water skier in peril is even better done in the book than in the movie. The key difference being that in the movie, the water skier does not know she's in peril. And no one does. No one knows that she's in peril. And in the book, the driver of the boat knows. He looks over his shoulder and sees a fin that's taller than his girlfriend. He sees a fin that's 7 feet tall. That's closing with her, that's moving with incredible speed. He knows the danger is out there. Whereas in the movie, neither the boat driver nor the water skier ever know. The boat driver only finds out at the last minute. After the water skier has been an hors d'oeuvre, she finds out that it's a shark. But it's too late to help herself. And it's wonderfully done. But there's a lot else that's done in here, too. There's a drama that unfolds here that is echoed in the movie Jaws 2. In the movie Jaws 2, Chief Brody has, for want of a better word, an emasculating personal crisis. He's fired from his job. And just doesn't feel like he's communicating with his own children at all. And there is, that drama is present in the book, but Searles gives it an external component. A loutish cop from New York City. He happens to be at Amity, and he doesn't have any manners at all. There's also mobsters in town that Brody has to deal with, leading to an incredibly good climactic scene in Jaws 2 that is not in the movie. There are no mobsters in the movie. But that loutish cop who comes in from New York City, Brody just takes a wild bug up his butt about that guy, largely because he is externalizing problems that he can't do anything about. I can't do anything about the fact that I can't communicate with my son, that my wife seems unhappy. I can't do anything about the fact that it looks like, beyond any kind of chance or reason, this giant fish is back to menace my community. I can't do anything about that, but I can give this guy a hard time. I can throw him in jail. I can at least do that. Searles does a really good job of it, believe it or not. You're not going to believe it, but still. Okay, then we have Peter Matthiessen, the author of Far Tortuga, which would be, this figure would be on that list of post-war novelists, of post-war people that I would have to deal with. What do you make of Peter Matthiessen? What do I make of him? He went on, he wrote nonfiction, Blue Meridian and whatnot, and Snow Leopard, was himself an explorer, and wrote fiction. At Play in the Fields of the Lord is about a ministerial couple that goes straight from the Moody Bible Institute to Tierra del Fuego to preach to the natives. And, the innocent, somewhat gormless husband and the impressionable young boy, and especially the repressed wife and the local jefe and the local Catholic priest, it's all very, very predictable. In a way that I don't think much of what this author wrote otherwise is. But Mathiasson wrote Far Tortuga, which is a genuine masterpiece of the period that I'm talking about, the 70 years that I'm talking about. It's a genuine masterpiece. A towering work of literature, of fiction for the post-war period. But he also wrote a Dudebro trilogy that he just couldn't let go of. He wrote it and then rewrote it. And I would have to come to terms with him. But At Play in the Fields of the Lord, although it is predictable, a lot of predictable Graham Greene stuff. This is like sort of an amalgam of Graham Greene, and Graham Greene is largely remembered. And the other author who's sort of mixed into the DNA here is largely not, and that's J.F. Powers. And they're mixed together here. But still, the prose is so beautiful, and the ending is so beautiful and so ambiguous that you won't mind. You just won't mind at all. Okay. Then we have, this is lovely. This lovely mass-market paperback of Corridors of Power by C.P. Snow. The Brothers and Strangers sequence of novels about British politics. That I read the whole of, I found them in 3 immense hardcovers at the Brattle Bookshop. And I didn't think that this could hold up. I really like this cover design. I really do. And I've always wondered, since I found this, if all the other books in the sequence have versions out there with this cover design. I've never seen any but this one that look like this. Usually these look terrible. But I reread the whole sequence when I found those hardcovers because they were good and sturdy. They could hold up to a reread. And I was amazed at how good these are. Again, C.P. Snow is another perfect example of the whole generation or two of writers that someone should write a towering work about. Trying to figure out what's going on in all this stuff. Instead of studying the usual suspects for the post-war world, we always study the usual suspects. And the reason that we do is because they made us do that. The loudmouth mid-century misogynists, the Kurt Vonnegut's, the John Updikes, the Norman Mailers, they made us do that. They set the table for conversation. And now that they're all gone, we don't have to listen to them anymore on Dick Cavett. Maybe we should be looking at what everybody else was writing at the time and seeing about it, seeing what it is. Maybe I should be doing that, is what I mean to say. And then we'll finish up for this shelf with a classic novel. This is a classic comic novel. It's got some schmutz on the cover here. I can't tell if the schmutz is coming from the Brattle Bookshop or if it's coming from being on the shelf. I'm hoping it's the one and not the other. This is Samuel Shem, and this is The House of God. Which was loosely transformed into a TV series called Saint Elsewhere, but also is a fundamental work for a subgenre of writing fiction. This particular kind of biting, humorous, workplace, professional world fiction is done wonderfully here. The epigraph for this book is wonderful, but I can't repeat it on a family channel. It's hilarious, and so is the book. The book is just sustainedly hilarious. The winsome 70s cover, is that what this is? This has got to be a 70s cover. The naked girl in the rear view. Yeah, 1978. The girl in the reflecting mirror there gives it away. This is hilarious, but it will also seriously make you think about hospitals. You won't think about hospitals the same way again when you're done with this. And that is it. That is the next step in this library tour. We are nowhere near done with this bottom shelf. Nowhere near. So we will move on next time. So I will wrap this up now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.